Bloop. All right, I believe we're recording. Here we are on the Find Out Friday session where the learning devs learn from the senior devs here at Concrete CMS. We've got a skeleton crew today as people battle various ailments. Oh, Mike's in. We're just starting with Find Out Friday. But I know, Evan, you have a question for Andy, and let's jump right into it.
All right. Yeah, basically, I just wanted to talk about this week in the forums and kind of as we updated documentation, we were talking a lot about tasks and a lot about command handlers and commands themselves. So I wanted to just kind of pose that over to you, Andrew. I know we've talked about it a bit, but just kind of open up, the floor to kind of discuss tasks, kind of like what we discussed, how tasks can be run from the dashboard or from the command line and how that's a different kind of thing. So yeah, if you just want to take it from there.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's probably kind of instructive to do a quick overview of what these concepts are. So in Concrete version 9, there is what we call like a command layer, and that command handler layer, and all that is PHP code that lets you encapsulate some kind of repeatable operation into a command object, which when you execute it using our application object, which just has a method named execute command, it will find the handler that's associated with that and pass that to a method in there. So, at a glance, if I were a young dev looking at this, I'd be like, this seems way over engineered. I don't know why do I need this? Why can't I just write PHP code that does the thing I want it to do? And that's totally fair. And that's why we haven't had one up until version 9. But the reality is, as web applications do more and become more and more decentralized, it's not uncommon to see the same types of operations being called from different places. So like, think adding a page or adding a user. These aren't great examples because those operations are so old in Concrete that they don't use the command layer. But some of the newer things, like clearing a cache, for example, like you clear the cache from so many different spots in Concrete. Like it's kind of, you clear it from the command line. You might clear it before you run some kind of custom operation you're trying to do. And so it's nice to know, hey, there's just this clear cache command object, and I can just instantiate it and pass it to my application and say, hey, do this operation. And that's all I have to do. And it takes care of doing that for you. And the command objects themselves can hold parameters. So you can say, hey, rebuild this multilingual language tree, and here's the tree ID. And it all just kind of encapsulates this logic into one spot so that you're not copying, even 5 to 10 lines of code around. Like, it becomes easy to break as time goes on. So it helps encapsulate this stuff. But it's also important to know this is kind of a pretty traditional PHP pattern. Like, different frameworks handle this type of commands or messages, as Symfony calls them, in different ways. These things also exist because you can send commands into a queue, for example, and then process them later. So that's kind of why these frameworks also exist, or these command layers also exist. They can sort of be bundled up and dispatched elsewhere and handled asynchronously. But it's important to note that all that stuff has no UI. Like, that's all just PHP code. Concrete provides a layer for developers to write that code and to use this layer in their own applications, but it's all custom stuff they're going to do. But it became clear while adding this that this is a powerful sort of paradigm for working with web applications, but it's a little bit limiting when it's only available as a PHP code. Like, that's good if you're, Laravel or Symfony dev, but we serve, an entirely different audience as well, that they do not. We serve editors who are trying to do stuff. And it becomes pretty clear when you're working with something like, hey, I've got to rescan, like when I'm clicking the rescan file button, which does a whole bunch of different stuff, rebuilds thumbnails, etc. And I'm also running that from the command line to be able to rescan all the files. And I've got this one custom button. And then I also have a job that I can cron to run to rescan all the files to fix stuff. Like, that's a lot of duplication of efforts, and why do I have all these different things? So it became pretty clear that what would also be nice, in addition to this sort of code only command layer, would be a layer on top that had some UI, perhaps integrated with the console as well, so you could run command line stuff. Perhaps could supplant some of the stuff we do for automated jobs, where you could schedule these sorts of things. So from that, Tasks was born, which is kind of a whole custom concrete layer for defining things that hook into this system and do a whole bunch of reusable tasks. So in older concrete, we had jobs. That's really where this all came from. They've been around since the beginning. There are things like reindex my site, rebuild my sitemap.xml, like stuff that you might run periodically that doesn't have a UI, but you might sometimes want to trigger from a UI. Sometimes you want to run it from a console command, etc. And tasks are in version 9. They are the sort of, they're automated jobs like 2.0 or 10.0. But they are their own new thing because there's so much more to them than automated jobs are. And I don't know if it makes sense to kind of walk through how those are defined or where they live or what they look like with my screen, or if you want to drive that process with some questions, like I'm open to how you want to delve into that more.
Yeah, I think the former sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Click so many prompts. Okay. Okay, so here we have the tasks dashboard page in Concrete version 9. It's got a bunch, this is all stuff that is sort of defined in the database. Like these are all concrete data objects that map to these tasks. And there is documentation for how to add to this list in your own package. You can install those. They, much like other things in Concrete, they are installed via the Concrete XML format. So here you can see this is when the core runs its installation. It installs all the tasks within this tasks XML file. And it's got things like clear cache, generate sitemap, rescan files. And much like automated jobs of yesterday, you can choose one of these things to run it, like generate sitemap is one that's been around forever. It just runs, and some of these tasks run immediately. And then when they're done, they just show up in here. Others of them, they all run immediately, I guess, but some of them also dispatch their sort of sub operations to run within a sort of a queue. So you might say, I want to rescan files. You can tasks, unlike automated jobs, can have input. So you can say, I want to rescan all the files, but I've already done it up to file number 500, so it's just start on 501. This is an example of a task that actually has asynchronous. It's a batchable task, I suppose, is what it's called. So it builds a batch, or it builds an entire set of files to rescan, and then it rescans them in batches, which you can see this happening here. There's an entire layer within tasks that lets you run right now what's happening, since I haven't configured it to do anything more exotic than this, it just it starts this process, and then periodically behind the scenes will do the operation through JavaScript, and then it will also receive kind of the status update. So if I were to refresh the page, it will sort of picks up where it left off. But it's all just kind of it is reliant upon my browser window being open. Now you can also because that's otherwise that would, or somebody being logged into the dashboard to keep those things going. However, there is a way to make it run in the background. So if you turn on manual queue listening and then go into your console and run this console command, or make sure that it's always running, then you basically it will no longer pull through your browser window. It'll just it will receive these task requests and just finish them without you even having to have your browser open, which is more performant, less likely to take longer or to be, weirdly halted the moment no one's logged into the dashboard. In Concrete, we kind of have to aim for supporting it's not exactly progressive enhancement in the way that the web developers define it, but it's kind of that idea where the base level version of any feature has to kind of work with as little configuration as possible for as many people as possible. We can't tell someone on a cPanel site out of the box to, okay, make sure to go set up your command listener on your Linux box to always be running this, and if it gets halted, make sure to get root access to make sure you can schedule that to always run. Like that's something we do on our servers, but by default we can't quite do that. So we kind of default to having as little configured as possible. But the best thing to do is to have all this stuff turned on, honestly, and to turn on logs for these. Tasks can also log their output to files. It's something all jobs could not do as well. And the task scheduler is the same thing. If you turn this on and you run this and you cron this command to run every minute, then what that will do is it enables you to, I'm just going to pretend like I have already enabled this, even though I have not, just to show it. Then it will actually, when you do a task, you can say, hey, I want to periodically deactivate users who haven't logged in recently, and I want to run that. Let me, that didn't do exactly what I wanted. It's funny. Did I save that? I did. No, weird. Well, that's supposed to let me, I guess I might chalk that up to being an in progress or a development copy of Concrete, but what that's supposed to do is let you, oh, that might actually just be weird. That is supposed to let you schedule a task. Oh, maybe that's this. No, okay. It's supposed to let you schedule a task from that interface as well, since I've turned that on, but perhaps something about how I have enabled this makes that not work. Regardless, that is kind of how that's supposed to go. And all of this kind of, and then, yeah, then the last thing that's kind of interesting about this is what I really wanted these tasks to be able to function as was not just kind of giving you an editor the ability to do the stuff. There have been certain times in the past where we also want to periodically run custom console scripts for things like business cases, custom things for client sites. And then inevitably, a content editor on our team will ask, hey, how do I run this? I want to teach the admins on their site how to run this thing. Can we make a button for this custom thing you wrote? And really the best answer is, well, I wish that there was a way to make these custom console scripts that are, we built them as custom console scripts to be robust and to take input, etc. How can I turn those into tasks? And so what's nice about tasks as well is, unlike automated jobs, tasks all automatically build they automatically will work on the console command, the command line without any kind of modifications. Automated jobs could be triggered from the console as well, but they didn't have any input. You couldn't, and they didn't have any output. So they would just tell you when they were done, but you could not print out anything from them while they were running. It was, a pretty limited system. Whereas with tasks, when you and there was also only a single command. It was a job run or something. And so what you get when you actually go to the Concrete console with tasks is you can see that every task here actually creates a console command for each one of these tasks automatically. So you can see we've got, and if you do rescan files, it will actually print out in real time as this is going. And what's cool is if you refresh the page, it's all kind of unified. So this is actually running. You can see the process of the thing you started on the command line in the actual page, because it's one complete unified system that is aware of all the different ways that it fits together. So when this is done, it'll be done on the command line as well. So yeah, we tried to make tasks, if really if there's a thing that you do with your concrete site that you would probably like to have editors or administrators be able to trigger from the dashboard, and you want to do it more than one time, I would strongly urge people to take a look at tasks. They are definitely better than jobs in every way. And there's a lot to them, but they're also easier once you kind of wrap your mind around how they work from how to define them in code. They are better to work with than jobs as well, because jobs were they had less going on, but the code that they also kind of didn't give you a lot of help with what you're trying to do. They didn't give you a nice developer experience with the ability to create batches of things to run and to work with command objects. They just kind of gave you a blank method and said, hey, run whatever code you want to run here. And if you're trying to do a batch, you do it this way, but good luck. And these are, there's a lot more engineering in them, but they are a lot more robust as well.
Nice. And I know back with jobs, there was like job sets, like that was one of the ways that you could kind of isolate. Because I know that this, the thing you're showing, that kind of master cron, that triggers, you have to set that up in order to have kind of the rest of the scheduling work. That's the only like manual setup you have to do in order. And then from there, you can kind of like do task scheduling within the dashboard, which is cool.
Yes.
So like, yeah, but I am curious about the grouping, or if that's just kind of rendered moot by the fact that you can kind of schedule them individually. Like you don't really need to trigger a cluster of them in a grouping, but I guess maybe you could. I see they are grouped here, right? So
yeah, the grouping is it's only for cosmetic purposes and and for user information overload purposes. It's not, you can't really, unlike jobs, there's no way to run all of the tasks within a group. There's definitely, I could like there was an idea behind that was good, where it was these are like, here are some things that you probably should be doing to make your site, here are the basic things like you should do daily, or you should generate your sitemap, you should reindex your search engine, you should update your statistics trackers, and probably deactivate users who haven't logged in recently. Like that is fair. I don't think we necessarily bring. There is an opportunity here to introduce a grouping here that is perhaps a little less tied to the sort of feature surface that a task is about. It works with, like you can see here, we've got users and groups, where it's like, and then we got site health. Like those are that's sort of the category of feature that the task touches. Like this deals with users, so let's put it within users and groups. But there's certain that just because a bunch of tasks deal with the same thing doesn't mean they all should be run in the same way. So like, I would argue, looking at this, that a healthy site periodically would, you would perhaps run a set of these daily that include remove old page versions, generate sitemap, deactivate users who haven't logged in recently, and remove unvalidated users. And you could run those 4 every day. Those all come from 4 different sets. Like, but why would I run those every day? I think because, it's important to have an up-to-date sitemap. And it's important to make sure that people who have deactivated, if you want to keep your user database clean, like, let's deactivate, or if you want for security and compliance purposes, yeah, definitely. And let's make sure that we deactivate users who haven't logged in, that we run that task as well. But I think like also with the addition of input and things like that, like you can't just say, let's run all maintenance tasks right now. Like half of them, some of them have no input, like clear cache, but some of them do have input. Or like let's reindex the content. It's like, well, which content? Like, do you want to clear the index before you reindex? Do you want to rebuild the index? The way that the task scheduling works is when you click run and you schedule a task, like the entire input parameters you've selected get bundled into that set. So you might say, I want to deactivate the users who I guess that's not exactly how that works, but yeah, I want to reindex just page content. I don't want to clear the index and I don't want to rebuild the index, but I just want to do pages, and I want to do that every day. I don't need to reindex files and users in Express like that. Those keep themselves up to date pretty well. So don't run that unless there's a real reason to run it. So I think what might be best is to teach people which of these are good to run when, and perhaps yeah, it might just be a documentation and a education opportunity, even more than just than more code. Because I can't see the way that these sets are set up. Like, yeah, you could add back the ability to run all the tasks within a set, but like just looking at this stuff, I don't know that that's that practical with the way these tasks are defined.
Right, and I would argue that, you know, I think that the job grouping kind of was almost more of a mechanism to kind of compensate for the lack of intra CMS scheduling capability, because like that's kind of what you would do as a workaround. It's kind of like, okay, well, these are my daily tasks, so I'm going to put them in the daily task group, and so every time I run this, you know, I hit the daily task group URL, you know, I do all my daily tasks. Whereas now we don't need that, right? Because we have the master cron and we can configure these things through the dashboard, which is not even to say that, you know, input stuff, which is, you know, a whole nother dimension. But I think that was primarily why job sets were necessary, was because you needed this kind of like, that was your kind of like, or, you know, I don't know, it's kind of a weird tangential way to create scheduling. You know what I mean? Whereas now we have the scheduling proper, so they're kind of moot. You know?
You could certainly just like, yeah, if you want to schedule, like, yeah, if the job set is so that you can define a bunch of tasks that are daily, then yeah, just go through and then schedule the ones you want to be daily, and then they'll show up on this schedule page. And you know, we're talking at most, you know, 5 to no more than 10 jobs probably running, and also like it is a little bit more clicking through one time, but it's probably not a terrible, like in practical terms, it's not a bad thing to perhaps take a more deliberate view of how and when you're scheduling your stuff. Like, just because you want to run these 5 things daily, like, do I really want to, you know, slam the server at midnight every single night to run these 5 things all at once? Or maybe I'll stagger them and run them I'll run this one starting 2 minutes in, or, you know, I'll be a little bit more thoughtful. And in that, being able to schedule them from the UI with that level of granularity is you know, gives you some tools that you didn't used to have.
Absolutely. Definitely. Well, yeah, no, that really answers all my questions there. Yeah, I don't know, go around the table if anybody else has any questions on tasks.
Nope. Learned all about tasks.
More than I can process at the moment.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, thanks, Andrew.
Sweet. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You.